It's August the 22nd, 2003. I'm in northern Kentucky interviewing Don Dix from the 82nd Airborne. Don, tell us when and where you were born.
I was born in Harrington, Kansas on the 22nd of July, 1922. My father was a railroader, which if you lived in Harrington, that was your main employer, was the Rock Island Railroad. I lived there until I went into service, but you might say I was from a broken home. My mother ran off with a farmer rancher when I was about 2.5 years old, and he lived in Oklahoma. And us kids, the two girls and I, we was kicked from one relative to the other. My father never remarried, and I was about 12 years old. I went to Oklahoma where my mother and stepfather lived on a farm and ranch during the dirty 30s. So I can relate to those drifts of dirt that drifted like sand. And a lot of people, I talk to people today that are young and they don't believe that the dust can drift like that, but it did. I would run back and forth. I get tired of Oklahoma, I'd come back up to Harrington, and I get tired of Harrington, I'd go back to Oklahoma. But anyway, in 1942, my father was in the railroad hospital in Kansas City. He'd been sick for quite some time, and well, I was going to high school in Harrington at that time, and I was a sophomore. Well, he was in the hospital, not getting too much money from the railroad, so I quit school and went to work to help take care of the things that we needed. We lived in a four-room house. There was 2 rooms downstairs and 2 upstairs. And one morning I got my mail about 9 o'clock. It was a day that we weren't working at Fort Riley. I was on a surveying party. And I got my draft notice about 9 o'clock in the morning since I quit school. And about an hour later, they informed me that my father had died in the hospital in Kansas City. So a good friend of mine and Dad got me a 30-day deferment. So we got Dad buried and got rid of the property in Harrington. And I went to Oklahoma to where my mother and stepfather was, and my 2 sisters and well, my one sister wasn't married then. We went down to Oklahoma, and the folks had moved off the farm and they'd sold the ranch land. Anyway, we was having breakfast, and I said, there's 4 days before I have to go back to Kansas to be drafted, and I don't think I'll do that. I'm going downtown and enlist. My brother-in-law, who is a year older than me, said, don't get in a hurry, I'm going with you. So we enlisted together, and we stayed together till he got shot up in Holland. But we got to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and they took us in this big auditorium to explain different branches of the Army to us. And they were explaining about the Signal Corps, and the infantry, the artillery, and then they said, we have a special branch that we're going to introduce you to today. And here come these 2 fellas out on the stage in their parachute uniforms and their boots, and standing tall, and really good specimens. And they explained to us a little bit about the parachutes. When they said it pays $50 extra a month after you make your graduation jumps, I looked at my brother-in-law and he nodded, and I figured, well, what the heck? So as soon as we was out of there, we volunteered for the parachutes. We got our uniforms and everything issued at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. They put us on a train and we went to Camp Toccoa, Georgia. Now, Camp Toccoa, I call it billy goat country. You're going from here to there, you go uphill, and you're going back, you're still going uphill. It doesn't matter which direction you go, you're climbing a hill. But we stayed there, about 4 or 5 days, and the 101st was there. they had some dummy jump towers, and we had to go down and for something to do, they gave us a little parachute training. We had to jump. There was 35-foot towers. It was a mock-up of the side of a plane with the size of the door. You put your harness on, and they hook you to the pulley, and you jump out, and you fall just about as far as you normally would from a live jump, and you slide down this long cable. Well, we did about 3 or 4 of those, and I don't know, but there's this hill that in Camp Toccoa, Georgia. The name of it has slipped my mind right now, but it's an awful climb to run up that hill. It's in the book, the Band of Brothers, and it's also in the movie, The Band of Brothers. Well, I made 2 trips up that hill. The first one I said, I called a sergeant sir, and he flat let me know that you don't call sergeant sirs. I think it's 2 miles up that darn thing. But there's just a cement post up there like, and you have to come back and tell them what's up there. Well, I made that trip all right, and I would say it might have been later on in the day, I said yeah to an officer, and he flat let me know that you don't say yeah to an officer. And so I went up that hill again. But it was, I think maybe they was trying to see if we had the willpower and the courage to do what we were told to do and get the job done. But anyway, we stayed there about 4 days, like I said, and we loaded us on a train, and we went down to Camp Blanding, Florida. We got in there at night. We had no idea where we were going. And out under this yard lamp was this officer standing there, rigid at attention, just like a statue. And it was Colonel Mendez, he was Major Mendez then. And it was our battalion commander, and his battalion was coming in on that train. But that was our first meeting or contact with Colonel Mendez. He gave us I want to say, a pattern to go by. We were to build ourselves after him. Just a magnificent man standing there under that light, and no movement whatsoever. But we finally got to where we stood attention the way he wanted us to, and parade rest and everything. And anyway, we went through jump school, and my brother-in-law doing parachute packing. If you didn't think you packed your parachute right when you got ready for your live jump, you could go down at night and bust it and repack it if you wanted to. But he did that one time. But we were standing in the packing sheds and the long tables that you lay your parachutes out on. We were standing there listening to the instructor. And I'm standing there at rigid parade rest, and my back of my hand was touching the table. That sergeant walked by. "Trooper, you're sitting on the table. Give me 25. So I got down. He walked away. I did 25 push-ups. I got up and I made sure I wasn't touching that table this time. The same sergeant came by. "Troop, did you do that 25? "Yes, Sergeant." "Did you cheat?" And I figured, boy, I said, "Yes." "No." He said, "Did you cheat?" And I said, "No, I did my 25. "Give me 25 more for not cheating when you had a chance." I got down, he walked away. I could only do about 15. And he came back and sized me out again, wanted to know if I did it. And I told him, I said, "Figure if I lie to him, he's going to kill me." So anyway, I told him, I said, "No, Sarge, I can only do about 15. I said 25. He got a straddle of me, picked me up by my belt, and let me go. And I hit 25. You couldn't win for losing. If you couldn't self-discipline and that, I don't think we would have ever made it. But you're gonna, and if you didn't do it, you thought it'd be a disgrace to your group. So you did everything the best you could and usually wound up getting it done. But anyway, we got finished with that, and well, we got out of jump school. We made our 5 qualifying jumps, and then we got leave. Well, I got to leave 1 week, and my brother-in-law left the next, and so we spent a week together at home in Enid, Oklahoma. And my little niece, it was about Easter time, my little niece, Joyce Ann, she's getting up to where she knew what the Easter Bunny was and that. And we were on the edge of town there at Enid, and we were sitting there, and I looked at my stepfather and said, "You hear that?" He said, "What?" I said, "I heard something out there." Well, I grabbed a shotgun, went out and shot up in the air, and went back in the house and said, "That darn Easter Bunny, Uncle Don shot the Easter Bunny." And you know, she's a grandmother and still holds that against me today, no sense of humor. But anyway, I had to go back before Clarence did. But I was downtown in Enid, and I'm walking along there, and within 3 blocks, I was stopped twice by the MPs. They had never seen a paratrooper. They questioned me about my bloused pants, about the hat. They wanted to see my orders, and they asked me what this PIR. I said, "That's Parachute Infantry Regiment, 508. And I kind of got smart with one of them when he was starting to get kind of nasty with me. I thought he was going to ask me to unblouse my trousers. There would have been a tussle there, I do believe, because you don't unblouse them for nobody. But anyway, we got back to Camp McCall, North Carolina, where we were stationed at that time. We went to there from the parachute school. We went to Camp McCall. And my brother-in-law and I, we got along. He was in one platoon and I was in another. We didn't associate because we didn't want people to think that one of us was helping the other, because I was the smallest one. And they figured, old Mac is helping that young one over there. But we made through the training. We went to Tennessee on maneuvers. We made our first night jump. And everybody was kind of hyper about it because we'd never jumped at night. We didn't know what to expect really, and nobody got seriously hurt, but we did make our night combat jump on the Tennessee maneuvers. We went back to Camp McCall, North Carolina, and we were out of training, and we were in gas warfare, and they was working with mustard gas. And a fellow by the name of Jimmy Deaton, who was in our company, was going out with some test tubes of mustard gas in his hands, and he was setting them off with electrical charges. And somebody left the wires hooked to the little generator that they set them off with. Jimmy got to the end of the line, not knowing that it was still hooked to the little generator. It pulled it over, it turned the handle, and those vials of mustard gas blew up, and it took his fingers. He got it in his lungs. He lived about 4 or 5 days, and I was chosen to take his body back to Little Rock, Arkansas. He had just gotten married, and his flag I was given instructions, was to be given to his wife. Now, his mother wanted that flag in the worst way, but my instructions were, and his wife got the flag. But I think that was one of the hardest things for me to do at that time. And I've been back to Little Rock once to go to Jimmy's grave. We were friends. We drink together, and we'd carouse around a little bit. But anyway, it was an honor to take him home. But while we were there, while I was on the route, the unit got orders to ship out for overseas. And I tried to get Little Rock is pretty close to Enid, Oklahoma. I wanted to get a couple of days, so I didn't know he was on orders. They tried to get me a couple, 3 more days travel so I could swing by Enid, Oklahoma, and then go back to North Carolina, but they told me I had to get back there. They wouldn't tell me why, so I got back and I found out. We were shipping out to Camp Shanks, New York. In fact, I had a very short time to get my stuff packed up and get my gear ready to go, but we got it done. We went up to Camp Shanks, New York in December of '43. They gave us some Christmas leaves up there, but we couldn't wear our shoulder patches. We couldn't wear our wings. We had to take the emblem off of our hat, or our caps, rather. It's not a hat. We couldn't blouse our breeches. We couldn't give any indication that we were paratroopers. So we stayed there, and we had barracks bags. We had the A bag and the B bag. Well, the A bag, certain articles of clothes went in it, certain parts of our equipment. B bag, certain stuff went in that, and they was forever sending down a change. Take it out of the A bag, put it in the B bag, take it out of the B bag. They finally, I guess they got tired of giving us something to do, but we finally got the bags the way they wanted them, and we got on board ship there in New York, and the bunks, if I remember, the hammocks, well, I think they were 5 or 6 high, and we had fellows that were sick all the way over. I mean, they were sick. We had one fellow that was motion sickness. You could stand in front of him and go like that, and he'd get sick. But anyway, he would be under the wing of an airplane. We'd be sitting in the shade waiting to load up, just a practice jump or a training jump, and he would be perfect. But as soon as he got in that plane, they haven't even started the motors yet, he would get sick, so we'd have to move him back for the door. But as soon as he got back on the ground, he was all right. There was the craziest. I mean, he was crazy to start with. He claimed to be an atheist, and it'll come out later on. But we never could figure out why he was the way he was, and the doctors couldn't even figure it out. But he made it. He turned out to be a darn good field soldier. We got into we went to Ireland first, and we were stationed at a little village called Port Stewart, and Ireland is a mighty nice country, but I found out that when you get to a foreign country, find out a little bit about the language and customs, because they let us sergeants and officers go to town, and I got acquainted with this little Irishman. His name was Keegan Kelly. You know what? It was Keegan and Kelly, not Kelly. And he wanted me to know it. My name is Keegan Kelly now. Not K-E-L-L-Y, it's K-E-L-L-E. But anyway, we got acquainted, and he was teaching me little songs and that, and it's very easy for me to pick up accents and dialects. So we got along real good. But my friend Keegan, he died. The Irish, they say, he taught me about the Irish are tight-lipped people, because when they talk, they don't open their mouth too wide. And at the end of a sentence, they go up and they go down. But anyway, that's enough of that, I guess. We stayed there for a couple of months, then we went over to England, to Nottingham. We were stationed in a park. All the other troops was out in big open fields, but we were in this Walden Park, and it's a beautiful park. we were in pyramidal tents, that's square tents, 6 men to a tent. And we had some training there. We did a couple of daytime jumps, and we made a night jump, preparing ourselves for Normandy, because we would be, well, we didn't know Normandy, we didn't know it was D-Day or anything like that. But we would making this night jump, and my brother-in-law, we were in the same company, but he was in the 2nd platoon. And at night you can't tell water, say a canal, from a blacktop road. My brother-in-law thought that he was coming in to this canal, and he didn't have time to guide his chute to get off out of the water, away from the water. But anyway, he slid up in his harness. He undid his 2 leg straps and his chest strap, and he got what he thought was a safe distance. Where you would open your arms and straighten your body out, and you just slide out of your parachute. He did that, and he landed on a blacktop road, and he banged up one knee real good. And so he missed Normandy. And we got ready to go into, we made our Normandy jump, but anyway, we got ready to go into Holland, and they told Mac that, Sergeant Mac, you don't have to go if you don't think your knee's right, and he convinced him that he was all right, so he went into Holland with us. But let's get back to right after that jump where he got banged up. We made a few more jumps, and we moved out to an airfield close to Nottingham. It's in the book, that the name of the field, Falkenheim or something like that. Anyway, we was in a big Quonset hut, and they would take us over into a building, a room about as big as this, and there'd be there'd be a platoon, 35 enlisted men and 2 officers, but we didn't have the 2nd officer. And there was a sand table, a big sand table, and it was scaled to where we would be jumping into Normandy. They had the maps over there, but they had the ledgers turned under, so you couldn't see. Well, I eased the edge up, and I saw it said France. So I kept my mouth shut, that I didn't know nothing. But the trees, the canals, the buildings was on that sand table, and we would go over that and over that. Here is our drop zone. If you land here, you go this way. To get to the assembly point, we'll be at this building over here, or we'll be in these woods over here. You knew where you were supposed to go when you got on the ground. They told us to basically go the way the planes are flying. Well, the darn planes were flying every direction that morning. So, and I had a little problem with that, because my plane didn't make it to the drop zone. It was going down. I jumped about 15 minutes early, and you're going 100 miles an hour, 15 minutes makes quite a bit of difference. But I was eight miles from where I was supposed to have been. And I got out of my parachute. Well, they were shooting at us coming down. There's little white things coming up, just floating up. And I was concerned about those. Those were tracer bullets. And they were going by us and going into our parachutes. And I was worried about them, but I forgot about those 4 or 5 in between them that weren't tracers. They were just regular ball ammunition. And O.B. Hill got a hole. Well, he got a hole in his canteen. They got so close to him with their fire. But anyway, I got on the ground and got out of my parachute. I went over and laid down in the ditch, a big deep ditch right by the road. And not knowing exactly where I was, I knew I wasn't where I was supposed to be. I laid on had a Thompson submachine gun, had a 9-pound landmine in a bag in front of me. I had 20 pounds of 20 quarter-pound blocks of TNT on one hip. On the other hip, I had my machine gun ammunition from a Thompson. had 3 days of rations, a gas mask. I carried the blasting caps for the TNT down on my ankle, keep it away from it as much as I could. That reserve parachute. I weighed about 130 pounds stripped. When I got all my gear on, I weighed close to 250. There was 2 guys pushing us in the plane and 1 pulling. So that's how we got in the plane, but getting out was no problem.
You went down like a rock, huh?
Just get to the door and fall out, or somebody would push you. But I was the second one in the plane, so I didn't have any problems with getting out of there. And I laid in that ditch for quite a while trying to get, well, where in the devil am I at? What do I do now? So I would leave my heavy stuff there, and I'd go maybe out for maybe 50, 70 yards, trying to find somebody else around that area. And you know what a hobnail is? It's like a big upholstery tack, and they drive it in the soles of the boots and shoes. You walk on those, and then when they get wore, you just replace them, so you're not wearing out the soles of the boot. The only one that had those was the Germans, the British, the French, and the Poles. I heard something coming down this road, and I knew it was hobnails. And I was very cautious, but I left myself lay there real still, and 4 Germans walked down that road, I would say within 5.5 to 6 feet of me. They didn't see me laying down in that ditch, and they went right on by. But I didn't do anything towards them because I figured there might be a bigger group behind them, or somebody that I didn't know was on the other side from my outfit. I start shooting, they start shooting, we might shoot one another. So those 4 Germans, within 5 minutes after I was on the ground, got away. And it's an experience I'll never forget, man, because you just don't know what to expect. And about daylight, I heard something moving on the other side of the hedgerow. Now their hedgerow is different than ours. It's real thin hedge, and it's very tall. And the ditch, I would say, was a good 5.5 feet deep that I was in. Well, anyway, I parted the hedge real easy, and there was a Frenchman getting ready to work his field. He had a walk behind, about a 10-acre field. He had a walk behind plow, a horse, and an oxen. He was going to plow that field that day. But I finally got his attention, and he came over very cautiously. He had no idea what was happening. And I showed him the American flag on my sleeve, and he looked at me wide-eyed, and he said, "Oh, monsieur, in région, oui, in région, monsieur, where am I at?" I showed him Chef Dupont on the map. No, Chef Dupont, no. And finally he found Regensville. And he got me to understand for me to stay right where I was at. So he left that horse and that ox hooked to that plow out there. And I might have been 15, 20 minutes. Here come a Frenchman down the road. He walked right on by. Then he stopped and kind of looked around, came back and gave me the motion to go with him. And he took me out, it might have been about 3/4 the length of a football field. He told me, got across to me to get down, stay there. And he left, and later on, here come another Frenchman by, and he got me to get up, and we went maybe, might have been a 1/4 of a mile. And he could speak a little English. And I asked him why he didn't take me any further. And all he said was the bush. That was German. They knew where the German was, and they wouldn't move me unless they knew that it was. But they was working me back toward Saint-Mère-Église. 2.5. I moved like that, and about 2.5 days later, I saw my first American. outside of St. Mary Gleeks. And but they took me around where all the fighting was. I wasn't in any danger, but it took me a little while to really understand what was going on. But when they kept telling me the bush, and I got back to the 508, and it's a couple of well, there's two that I talked to, and I could see there was more around Americans. But I asked them what it was like down towards Chef DuPont, and they said it was clear. And that maybe 5 miles down there. Well, I took off towards Chef DuPont, and I got down to where I was supposed to be, and Lieutenant Horn was the first one I saw, and his exact word is, "Where in the hell have you been?" you're goofing off. But we got our position set up down there, and was there. Then we took off on different missions for the D-Day invasion to cut off the peninsula. I'm trying to think of something that might have happened there that might be a little humor. But anyway, it's going. My mind's going right now. Well, we got through with our Normandy operation, and we went back to England. There was very few of us of the original bunch that left 30 days before. The 4th of July was our last contact. We were working on Hill 90 and Hill 95, and we lost a lot of casualties there. You know, I got hit before we got up that far. We were going in, 3rd Battalion was going into a place called La Haye-de-Pointe, and Sergeant Rooney lost his foot on that operation, and I got a scar up here about as big as a pencil, and one down on my right leg about as big as a nickel. It really wasn't a bad wounds. I never left the front lines. The medic put some medication on it, some sulfur powder to help sterilize it and that, and we changed the bandages there, and I never left the front lines. So, but I got my Purple Heart. So it's at home someplace. I haven't seen it for a while. My wife packed things up one time, and she was good about that. But we got through at Normandy. We went back to England, back to Walden Park, and my brother-in-law was there to greet us when we got off the trucks, and our replacements was there to greet us. And the next morning after we got back, we was down at the mess tent, and naturally all of us, well, let's call them the old guys, we were sitting over there together because we knew those were replacements for us. And the cooks outside was, they burnt wood in the burner, in the fire pits out there, and they was breaking wood, and one of them cracked a board, and it sounded just like a artillery shell landing. Well, all of us guys that just got back, we're under the table. And those new ones wanted to start to laugh, but they knew better. You could hear some of them snickering, but boy, that sounded just like about like a mortar round going on, you know. And we all jumped and got under the table, but then we got assigned we got a replacements assigned to our platoons, and I tried to assign one of the older guys to be sort of a guiding light for the new ones. We didn't get too close to, relationship with them. There's just something about it. We didn't know them. We didn't know what to expect from them, but we would teach them as much as we could, give them all the advice we could, but to buddy with them and drink with them, we kind of shied away from that because we didn't know how long they'd be with us. But our old guys, we used to. I told the lady that's with me here that people always say that if they knew then what they know now, they would have taken better care of themselves. I would have partied harder. Anyway, we got that all straightened out, and at one time, General Patton had a big pocket formed, and he couldn't get his pinchers closed. And they was going to drop paratroopers in that open space where he was trying to close up around Saint-Lô. Well, here he is coming in from both sides. Germans trying to get out, and they're going to put us in the middle of that frying pan. But before we would be loaded up, we'd get to the airfield, and they'd send us back to base camp, and we'd be there for a while, and back we'd go again. And he finally got the pocket closed, so they didn't send us into that operation. While we were that go again, wait again, we had our mortar squad, and they were a crazy bunch. They wanted to find out if the blasting cap inside of the fragmentation hand grenade would break just the hand grenade. Well, we kept our ammunition and everything, so they took a canvas cot, took the blankets and put some blankets on it, then they were folded so they was good and thick, and they got some more, and the idea was that they'd screw the head off the hand grenade, pour the powder out, put the head back on it, pull the pin, slip it under those blankets in the middle of them, and if it did break the grenade, why, those blankets would collect the fragments, no doubt. Well, they messed up and got a full charge grenade, and they fixed their grenade, and they laid it down, and when they told the guy to get the grenade, he grabbed the wrong grenade. Well, they didn't get hurt, but they paid for the tent, they paid for the cot, and the blankets. Excuse me. But that's what, right after that, they took the grenades and the ammunition away from us, so they wouldn't let them play with them no more. But we got ready to go, and like I said a while ago, we got ready to go into Holland, and they told my brother-in-law that he didn't have to go unless he thought his knee was ready for it. And he said, he called me a nasty name, and he said he wasn't going to let that little get ahead of him, because he didn't think there'd be any more airborne operations. So we went to the airfields again and got going. The flight into Holland was a daylight flight, and we was all watching the scenery below and over the channel. It was a good flight, but we had about 30 minutes of a heavy flak field to go through. And you're in that plane and look out the window, you see this black puff. Well, that's the flak. You can see it on the movies and that. And some of the planes got hit pretty good with the flak. Excuse me. That's water. Anyway, we got to our drop zone, and our platoon jumped on what we call the far end of the drop zone, and we had to go through the second platoon to get up to not Groesbeck, but Bergendal, where we were to set up roadblocks. And we're walking along there. I got the platoon together, and Lieutenant Bush and I are walking up at the head of them, because it was pretty secure at that time, the drop zone was. And I look over and here's that big Irishman laying in the ditch. I said, "What in the devil are you doing there?" He said, "Oh, I got hit. 5 minutes on the ground and he was going home." That was his combat experience. And he was out unrolling an equipment bundle. And they tell me that they think one of our own new men thought he was a German, cut down on him and got him right through the elbow. But he's still alive. He lives in Tucson, Arizona. And I still rib him about his combat experience. So, but he's a pretty good sized boy, so I don't mess with him too much. We got our objective set up at Bergendal, and we was there for quite a little while. We could look out over the flats and see the Nijmegen Bridge, which was the 82nd's, one of the 82nd's objective. And you could see the Germans moving around down there on some artillery pieces. The British forward observer for their artillery finally got up to us. They're supposed to be up there in about 2 days, and it took them about 4 or 5 days to get up to us, and I accused them of running out of tea, because they would stop for more and have their tea. But he finally got up there, and he saw these gun positions out there, and he called back a fire order. He had a radio, but as loud as he was hollering, he didn't need the radio. And I swore those Germans down there would hear him, and then they would turn those guns on us up on this hill. But evidently they didn't hear him, because he was hollering, range! And he'd give the range, and then he'd holler, deflection, when they'd fire around. And I threatened to tell him to get back off there, because I didn't want him up there in my area. But we got our Nijmegen Bridge. We made a night river crossing, which we were never really trained to do. It was a canvas fold-up boat that it was American made, and you paddle your way across in it. The British was supposed to be up there and have them up there at a certain time. Well, they was about 3 days late getting them up there, so we were ready to go, and they're on the way, and no, we're not ready to go. But we finally made our night river crossing, got to the other side of the Wall River, and took off towards Arnhem, where the British dropped in, I think there's around 6,000 troops, and when they came out a few weeks later, there was only 2,000 of them. The bridge too far. And we worked our way up there, and we couldn't get to them. But we took a lot of ground, and we took prisoners. We had casualties our own. From there, we went back into a reserve area, and we finally went down, after Holland, we went down into France, a base camp, place called Soissons. It's a small French village. It was a German barracks, and we stayed there. That would be in September, October. I want to say, yeah, in October, last of October, the 1st of November, we went into Soissons. And that was to be our base camp. No matter what we did, we'd always go back to that. And we got they told us one night that we're getting replacements in for Holland, that our losses for Holland. And they'd be in the morning. Well, we got them in the next morning, and they broke them down to so many to my platoon, so many the second and the third. And I'm talking to those fellas that was assigned to me, and I told them that we just got out of Holland, and some of our guys was lost, and you're our replacements. We want to make you feel like you belong to the unit and all that. And here come the company runner to tell us, don't unpack anything. The Germans have made a break. We're going to Belgium. And that's, honest to God, I didn't get some of their names on my roster. We were not equipped for winter combat. We took just what we had. It might, a pair of OD pants under our jumpsuit, a sweater maybe, or an OD shirt under the wool shirt under our jump jackets. We didn't have overshoes, we just had our jump boots. Gloves, we had gloves, some of us. And the truck showed up, and they loaded us up, and we took off for Belgium, for the Bulge. We got, pretty close to St. Vith, and we ran into the Germans. The fellas some of those up front got out of the trucks and set up a perimeter, and these truck drivers was Colored Transportation Company. And here come these drivers down, these truck drivers and the assistant driver. And we're off the truck, and the driver's out there with us. And the men are scattered out, and that one of them truck drivers stopped and says, I was getting out of here. What are you going to do? And this truck driver of mine said, I'm going to stay with the Sarge. He's got a whole lot of guns. And they finally got everything straightened out and got the drivers back, and we got back on our truck. It didn't amount to do much up front. And we took on off until we got up to our debarkation point and got our orders, our assignments, and we went out and set up our defensive positions. And I was assigned to a place, little village called Compte, and we called it Compte Ridge. I set my CP up in a house that was just flat rocks, laid on flat rocks. And I found out later on, it's in there about, we spent a week there. And the Germans was on one end of Compte and we were on the other. They didn't bother us, we didn't bother them. Down the road one day, here come 4 young Germans. They had to be teenagers. They didn't want to fight. They just wanted to get where it was warm. They gave up, they stayed with us in that house. Finally, they found out that we had four prisoners down there, and they made me send them to the rear. But they weren't bothering us, we weren't bothered. If they'd have given us one shot in our direction, shame on them, they done ripped their britches. But if they didn't give us any trouble. They didn't want to go back, they wanted to stay with us. But anyway, they went back, and soon later on we moved out and went back up on the hill and set up a defensive position up there. But we didn't get any fire from down there or nothing. The Germans, we saw them pull out early one evening. And I go back to that village. My friend Joseph, that lives in Malmedy, takes me up there every time we go to Europe. I get a time off from the tour to go back up, and we go to that house. And the last time I was there, Joseph was talking to this Belgian, telling him why we were there, and that I had my headquarters set up there. And the old boy asked me if I remembered, well, through Joseph, if I remembered the 3 ladies that was upstairs. Here we go with women again. And right off the bat, I didn't remember. But I told Joseph, I said, we'll go in this little door. There's a little kitchen. We go to a door on the left, and the center beam on that room is swayed. We went in there, and there was that beam that was swayed, and that was the house that I had my headquarters set up in. But later on, I was thinking, and yes, I do recall. I told the women were there. I told them that we was going to use the place as a headquarters, and this woman kept like that. And I said, no, we're not going to go upstairs. Well, she's going to try to tell me that there's upstairs, and but they stayed upstairs there while we were in their house, and it's quite a quaint little house. It's over 200 years old, and this fella went to the end of a building right across the street from where we was at, and he reached back through this vine, and he came out with a little Madonna that was in that crypt. And I remember seeing that in that little crypt. So I knew then that's where we were. And there's like a mine or a rock quarry up in the side of those hills where we finally wound up. And it's a real nice stone, and it's the stone that they use to sharpen knives. Well, he gave me a good chunk of it, and I sharpened my knives on it at home. But then we finally got the bulge straightened out. On Christmas Eve of '45, we were on one side of the hill, and it was a real nice, quiet evening. You could hear the snow crackling. Nice moonlight, and we were in reserve. We were up the hill from G Company. Well, the Germans made an attack, and they did the number on G Company. So I Company counterattacked it. We went down through them, and the Germans pulled out and went back to where they were before. And we heard something in this little stone building, and it was two Germans in there, two young kids. Up in the bulge, they had the young kids and old men. It was too old for war before, but they might have the Panzerfaust, an anti-tank weapon. That'd be the only weapon they had, or they might have a rifle with very little ammunition. But anyway, they came out. One of them was wounded. He had a stomach wound. And we took them back up the hill and turned them over to get them back out of there and get that young man's wounds taken care of. Dusty Rhodes, my platoon medic, took care of the wounds, dressed his wounds. But the kids had no weapon with them. No ammunition. They had just gotten rid of everything. Wasn't nothing to do with it. But they made it. I guess they made it through all right. Because I don't know. Well, I don't know what happened to them, and I really not too concerned anymore. But what time we got left?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. The war ended. We were at a training camp. Well, you might call it that. It was there at Sissones, and we had operations called off. They was going to drop us on concentration and prisoner of war camps to liberate them towards the end of the war. But the ground forces was moving so fast that by the time we was ready to go, why they had already liberated them and gone past them. So the war ended, and that was a pretty good celebration. We had inter-battalion competition the next day. It was just a day of celebration. They took a glider tow rope, the rope that they hook onto the planes and the gliders, and I Company and I think it was H Company was going to have a tug of war. We got everything set up. The whole company was on the rope. Now those ropes are they're good sized rope, strong. Believe it or not, they got a pulling that so hard that it broke, and it sounded like a gunshot going off. Sergeant Skipper was up front. The guy behind him got his arm broke from it. It snapped and it snapped and went down the line. Several of our guys got pretty well banged up, but Skip, he just got knocked down because he had died because he had enough points to go home. He had his 85 points, and he knew that he was leaving within a day or two, and if he broke his arm, he'd be tied up there for a little bit longer. But we were there, and they got our orders. They sent us up to Frankfurt as Eisenhower's personal, interior, and escort guard. Your unit would be, we were billeted in a little village outside of Frankfurt. I want to say Heidelberg. I was stationed there too for a while. But anyway, I lost my track.
Eisenhower's personal guard.
We were sent up there as Eisenhower's, and we were billeted in a little place called Hedderheim. And we were in apartment buildings. like our assisted living buildings now, and we had so many men to an apartment, and we had real nice quarters. I sent the 3 platoon sergeants up on an advance party, and they scrounged around, and we had a refrigerator, we had a washing machine, and the rest of the barracks didn't have, or the apartment, so they might have a washing machine, but our platoon sergeants took care of us. I mean, they were scroungers. They were midnight bandits. We pulled our duty up there for, let's say for a month. You would be on what was regimental duty. You would be pulling regimental details or battalion details, whichever the situation was. Then another bunch would be out in the villages, living out in these small villages. They'd confiscate the bicycles because they wanted to keep these Germans in one place. You take a bicycle away from a German today, tomorrow he's got another one. Take that away from him, tomorrow he's got, don't ask him where he's got them. And confiscate weapons. They just wanted to not give the Germans any opportunity to move about too much or to have any weapons or anything they could use against us. You might be on, when you was on regimental duty, you was no doubt down at IG Farben building as the guards for the building, security for the building. Anyone coming, any military personnel coming in to go to work in the building, their ID tags had to be out where you could see them. And if our people had any questions, they would stop them and ask them and question them and make sure that nobody got in the building that wasn't supposed to be in there. We pulled guard, walking guards outside around up, and just up the road a ways from the Farben building was what they called a wax circle. It's where the wax were billeted. And we pulled guard around that. One night, one of the guards was on duty. This fella, I don't know, we don't know if he was going with one of the wax or had been down to the wax detachment or not, but he came up to this corner and turned. He was in uniform. He wasn't a paratrooper. But the guard hollered halt, the guy didn't halt. The guard hollered halt again, he didn't halt. By golly, he shot him. Right, that was his orders. And the guard didn't get any punishment for it. There was a hearing, but he wasn't charged with murder or anything like that. Our guys, when they said something, they meant it. I was up there one day checking on my troops. We were interior guard at the time. And here comes these whacks in to the Farben building. And our fella told him, said, wait here, I got to check you. And they just laughed and kept on going. Maybe they did that to the MPs that had the duty before us, but they didn't do it with us. And the elevators were just like a big belt with a board on it. You'd step in the elevator, and when you got to the floor, you'd step off the board, and that was it. And on the other side, it was going down. I told those girls, I said, I'll see you on the next floor. By golly, they got off on the next floor. And I told them, when our people tell you to stop, I don't care if your ID tags are out or not, they tell you to stop, you stop. You let them check. And if they tell you to run, you better run. They are in charge of that area. And if they mess up, why, it's their problem. But anyway, my mother at that time was in bad health. Oh, that's okay. When the war ended, I was a platoon sergeant. Our first sergeant had points, so he went home. I was appointed acting first sergeant. Now, I knew what a platoon sergeant and squad leaders and that does, but I had no idea what the first sergeant's job was. So anyway, they told me that I was going to be the first sergeant. So, okay, we got orders to move into Frankfort, and we got everybody up there and got them in their billets and squared away and got our assignments. We were battalion detail. Our first job was up there. I finally was made permanent first sergeant, got the promotion and the pay. The pay then was for a first sergeant was $132 a month plus the $50 jump pay. Now, that was pretty good. That was a lot of money then. It was. But we was there, and in August, September, October, we got up there in June, July. Anyway, my mother had been in bad health for quite some time, and I got word that she wasn't doing too good. They didn't give her too much time. So I fired off a letter back to Oklahoma there and told them to check with have the Red Cross look into it. And in my letter, I told them the procedure to get the word back to me. Well, I lacked 3 points of having enough to go home, but the Red Cross checked it out, and I went home early. I don't know who took my place as first sergeant, but I got an idea that it was either Gallagher or Elliott. But anyway, I went home. I got home in, October, November. I got back in the States, and we landed at Boston. There was the ship I came back on. They just got us on any ship that could get me out of there. First one going back. Anyway, there was 750 colored troops on the boat. There was another first sergeant, and 2 first lieutenants. They put us up in sick bay because we were segregated. They couldn't put us down in the hole with the rest of the troops. So we rode back to Boston up in sick bay. We ate,